All right, let's talk a little bit of Florida. There are all kinds of things going on there. Edgar Thompson joins us from the Orlando Sentinel, and he knows the Gators as much as anyone. We're in this, Edgar. First of all, thanks for making the time. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, happy to do it. It's been a while. I tell you, it's a professional setup, man. I like this.
Thank you, thank you. We're doing
Yeah,
what we can. So
yeah,
uh,
good.
this whole video aspect has been an interesting challenge for us. I'll just give you that.
Sure.
Edgar, speaking of a challenge, Jaden Rashada was supposed to be a Gator. He's not a Gator. What can you tell us about what happened with that NIL pledge that apparently didn't have any weight to it?
Oh, it's just been a nonstop drama, man. It is. I'm hoping we're past the Rashada drama. I'm not sure. I'll get to that once I kind of lay out the principles a bit for you and the listeners. Jaden Rashada committed to Miami in late June, and the Gators were hot on his trail. He's a California high schooler, Northern California, top quarterback prospect. I think he's 5'6", 7", depending on what service you look at. Real natural thrower of the football, very talented, and needs to build up his body and some things, but he's got a lot of upside. He really can make some tough throws. Not everyone can. So the Gators were, left at the altar and pretty unhappy about it. And the rumor was Miami, which has the backing of this billionaire. He did Life Wallet, I think's the company. John Ruiz was funding this massive NIL deal for Rashada at $9.5 million, which we're like, what? So Nico, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, is coming to Tennessee. How do you pronounce it?
Yamaleva is the best I can do right now.
Oh my God. Well, that was a lot better than I would have ever done. So I'm not going to try. So 8 million is the rumor on him. I guess the going rate now in the name, image, and likeness age is 1 million up front, $1 million a year for the top guys, and it could be more. Pretty obscene numbers, crazy. Anthony Richardson made about $1.5 million last year for the Gators, is what we believe and have heard. So you get paid, man, if you're a quarterback at a blue blood program now, and that's how it works. Well, I think the Gator Collective, which is a group of people that raise money to facilitate name, image, and likeness deals for athletes of all sports, not just football. I think they've done about 150 deals, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're headed by a gentleman, and I don't want to get into a bunch of names because truly, Dave, I wonder, these people in some of these areas are going to be like rats in a corner at some point because there could be lawsuits coming and things like that. And I don't need me putting names out and getting involved in litigation. But there are people that run these collectives, own them, whatever. And I believe it got into a contest of like who can like get this kid, tug of war, and they overdid it on whatever the deal was, and they somehow got involved in a deal paying at least $13 million. Now, it was probably incentive laden. It was over years. So who knows what the upfront money probably was $1 million. But the kid could have made a lot of money playing football at Florida. Well, the problem is the collective doesn't have a lot of money. I don't even know if they've ever even raised $1 million total. So they're promising, they're writing checks they can't cash, apparently. And this thing, they tried to terminate the deal in early December. So then they made this offer, and the kid flipped his commitment November 10th. He was in the swamp November 12th against South Carolina. His father was telling people, oh, my son is just happy to be at the school he always wanted to be at. Wasn't talking about money, NIL deals, anything like that.
So, just to clarify, he flipped from Miami, where he was, to Florida.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of, So it went Miami commit June, flip November 10th. Then they had this deal, terminated the deal in December 7th, in fact. Signing day arrives December 21. Billy Napier's press conference is dragging. I mean, it wasn't starting. It was going, we were waiting and waiting and waiting. longer than usual. Well, the rumor was Rashada hadn't signed yet. And we're thinking, oh my God, is this kid going to bail on his commitment today? Which would just be a nightmare. Well, that would have been the best thing to happen in retrospect because the nightmare was to come when this surfaced. And I reported the details in the 13 million before anybody. I heard, I mean, it was out there and he hadn't enrolled in school and yada, yada. And then, so we found out what happened. Well, January 3rd, so the enrolled date was January 9th, I believe. January 3rd, Rashada was at the Under Armour game in Orlando. And I talked to the kid. He was like great personality, funny. He has an American Bulldog back in California. He wasn't able to bring with him. And we're like, oh, really? Will we ever bring him? His name's Biggie, like after the rap star. And he's like, oh, I might bring him next year. We're going to redshirt him a year, which I thought was clever. He's great. So we were like, oh, cool. He's going to be fun to deal with. Never showed up to campus. He was coming from Orlando to Gainesville, which is where I live. And, you know, it's an hour and a half drive. Never came, went straight back to California, and the drama began. And where we are now is the young man asked for a release from his national letter of intent. It was fine. It was granted after a couple of days. I don't know what agreements and things were made. I mean, there isn't like a financial agreement. UF isn't going to pay this kid to get out of his deal. The collective is going to have to pay him something, you would think. Is there going to be a lawsuit against the collective? Are they going to push for their money? Are they going to push for 13 million? What are they going to ask for? Meanwhile, the kid's visiting schools. He visited Colorado. He and Coach Prime and the guy's father, Harlan, would be a good little pairing there, grouping. Arizona State, Washington, we've heard, and there might have been another school. The kid's talented, and he'll go on with his life, but this will always kind of be following him, or will be following him for a good while, and we'll see where he gets. But it's going to haunt, I believe, Billy Napier in this program for a while because it looked inept. It was an embarrassment, and it's going to be used negatively on the recruiting trail against him. How wouldn't you?
It to me is worse than the old cardinal sins that are okay now. And the cardinal sins used to be, because I covered recruiting for way too long, but it was pulling a scholarship from a young man for just performance during his senior year. Then you couldn't go back into that high school ever again. And the other one was pushing a kid out the door that couldn't play currently on your roster. Nowadays, that's just business. Those two things happen all the time. This is the new cardinal sin. Promising a young man money and it's not there when he shows up. That's bad, Edgar.
Well, so I told you, you know, off camera, I'm heading down to the PGA Merchandise Show, and I'll be covering some Florida swing. In fact, the golf league, just announced it's coming to Orlando in late March, the week before the Masters, right?
Wow.
So I'm going to be covering it. I'm a golf guy. I'm going to the PGA. I'm doing all this. I just covered the LPGA tournament in Orlando for a couple of days. Lee Trevino had a famous line: pressure's when you show up to the golf course playing for, you know, $50 a hole and you got 5 in your pocket, right? Or whatever it is. But that was Trevino because he was so confident and cocky and he'd probably win. But you can't be, you know, showing up with $5 in your pocket and promising a kid $50 to come play for your school. And I don't think Napier had any involvement in this deal, first of all. He would have put the kibosh on this thing instantly. Scott Strickland, the AD here, respected guy, great gentleman to deal with. These men, and Billy's been great. He's a man of integrity. I mean, that's one thing about Billy. It's all about like the experience for the player, the brotherhood. I mean, it gets a little tiresome to listen to him talking about this stuff, life-changing experience. He wants to pay the players on his team. He wants the guys who are doing the work, who are producing, to reap the rewards of this name, image, and likeness stuff. He doesn't want to be pay for play, but that's what it's becoming. And the collectives are running off doing this. And the problem, Dave, is it's third-party people, third-party affiliations that are doing their thing under the umbrella of the athletics department. Former AD Jeremy Foley said to me and Mark Long, the Associated Press writer here one time, he's like, these collectives, man, it's like they're out there raising money under for the Florida Gators. I don't know that I want people that aren't working for the university raising money for the Gators. It's very complicated. They're going to have to figure this stuff out. We're not even 2 years into NIL, but I don't know how they change the legislation. I don't know if you put the, genie back in the bottle. I don't know how you do it. And then you restrict the payment of these players? I mean, this is America. You can't.
No, you can't. And something you said to me that really stood out. So I don't know how familiar you are with Tennessee, and they've got a group called the Spire Group. They're literally raising, no exaggeration, millions, if not tens of millions. You use the number hundreds of thousands. When I look at Tennessee and Florida and a group of other programs, I consider them the upper end of the SEC. So why does Florida not have their NIL ducks in a row when schools like Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, even though they don't admit to it, they do have their NIL ready to go? Why is Florida not in that same position? That's befuddling.
Yeah, I'm all over the map a little. My chronology earlier was a little confusing too, but one thing I didn't mention, there's an ancillary group to the collective, which is more like the local muni. And then there's the country club. I don't know what the best golf course in your area is, but let's say Seminole, which is like an esteemed course in South Florida. It's like Seminole versus a local muni I might play here. The Gator Guard is the country club group. It's $1 million buy-in. And there's several guys in that paying $1 million just to be in it. A lot of wealth in that. And the thought is we're expected to back this deal, but it wasn't ever signed. I mean, the contract was not signed by anybody that had that kind of money. The deal was signed by the Rashada family and a member of the collective, and that's it, based on the reporting of others. I haven't seen the contract, but that was reported by others. So, yeah, the thing's a mess, man. And it's like, we're talking here and it sucked all the oxygen out of the room on this conversation too. It's like Billy Napier's meeting with the media next Wednesday, I assume, for signing day, even though they only have like one guy. They have some transfers to talk about. It's going to be a bunch of Rashada questions because these coaches, I don't know how Josh Heupel is, they don't talk like ever when they don't have to. When they're not in season, it would behoove Billy, in my opinion, to get out and talk about this, even if it's off the record, just to get it talked about before we go in next Wednesday and start hammering on this topic exclusively. It's, I don't know how you get the yoke off of you if you're Florida and you move on from this. I guess, time heals, but it's going to be interesting to see how it impacts the future recruiting class here at Florida. The good news for Billy, he has a commitment from five-star DJ Lagway. He's a kid from Willis, Texas. I think that's north of Houston, an hour or so. And he's all in on the Gators, and he's talking about helping put together this great class. And he wants to have a Pied Piper effect like Chris Leak did years ago in 2003 when Ron Zook signed the #1 class. It began with Chris Leak signing, and he lured a lot of guys here.
Wow. Let me ask you this, and I'll leave you this because I know you've got the golf tournament to cover, and I'm a little bit jealous. But as opposed to 12 months ago, how do you feel about Billy Napier now in 2023 as opposed to January 2022? Because everybody thought that was a fantastic hire, and it's kind of gone a little shaky since then.
Yeah, I mean, the jury's still out, obviously, on the long-term prospects of the Gators. And I went to Chatsworth, which is up there near Chattanooga. It's northwest Georgia, over by Dalton.
Yeah.
Carpet capital. So I did a big story on him, met with his people from his hometown, really enjoyed it. The guy's got tremendous moral fiber. He's great upbringing. The praise is endless for him just as a person, and you can see that. And he's very smart, very organized guy, very determined recruiter, which is something they needed. They needed organization. They needed better recruiting. The football wasn't great at times, but was that the talent? Was that Anthony Richardson not making checks at the line, completing certain passes you needed to make. I mean, Anthony's inaccuracy held back that offense some, but he also added some in that offense with his explosiveness just to be able to take off and run for 50 yards for a touchdown on any play. So I don't know. But yes, in terms of play callings, there's some clock management questions. Just the brand of football wasn't that fun to watch. The recruiting was good, but they didn't hit on all cylinders at the end like you thought they might close strongly, and really didn't. The work in the portal's been good, but not overwhelming. Hasn't been underwhelming, but that would be my overall theme so far is I'm a little underwhelmed. Now, plenty of time, but next year's schedule is no picnic. I mean, this could be a 3-year deal, but what, you're going to tell me 22 months from now, you got to wait. If I'm a fan, I got to wait 22 months to see the results. You know how it is in this world, man. People want things like this. I mean, the impatience is incredible. So Billy is already losing some fans, but I think the real hardcore fans who are willing to like be patient and take the long view and recognize the positives think that he can get the job done. We'll see. I mean, the SEC has improved immeasurably, and the East is tough now, and Tennessee's part of that equation now, and the Gators are lagging, man.
Edgar, great stuff. Go to the golf course. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, man. Appreciate the time, Dave.
Thank you. It's Edgar Thompson of the Orlando Sentinel, covers the Florida Gators.